Hello everyone, welcome to Minespider TV. I'm Nathan Williams, founder and CEO of Minespider, and today I want to talk about Minespider's layering system, and specifically how we have arranged it to safeguard data. Data is always a complex issue. Who owns data? Who should own data? Who should have the right to see data? And in the supply chain context, it's really difficult because you have companies who are attempting to share transparency data, where their materials came from. But this data is very sensitive. It's data that includes data about their customers. It might have trade secrets. It might have data that they don't want their customers to see, or maybe their competitors to see, such as pricing data. But yet this data is important for anti-corruption measures, for ensuring provenance. It is a very tangled issue. The way Minespider has addressed it is to separate data into 3 different layers of visibility. These layers are all under the control of the data owner. On the top, we have what is known as the public layer. The public layer in any blockchain context is data that is visible to anyone using the blockchain. This layer is the way you can be sure that the data on the blockchain is unchanged. Everyone using the blockchain can know some data, and because everyone knows that data, everyone can verify that the data is true. This is what prevents us from going and changing data. In Minespider, we use the public layer to create digital certificates. So everyone using the blockchain can know that a certificate exists, what it is used for example, gold or tin or other metals, how much of that metal the certificate is good for, so a ton, a kilogram, and what is the account of the owner, so that you know who owns which materials. The second layer is what we call the transparency layer. This is data that we want our customers to see, and their customers, and their customers' customers, but maybe not our competitors. We don't want everyone to read this data. This is semi-sensitive data, not completely sensitive data. What could go there? Government licenses, the names and addresses of the points of production, such as a mine. Does it come from the Congo? Does it come from Peru? Does it come from the US? Certificates. ISO certificates. Do you have your ISO 14001? Do you have your 9001? Do you have policies, self-assessment questionnaires, other data that communicates what the material is that the certificate is good for, and that is useful to downstream customers? The final layer is called the private layer. So this is data that is perhaps sensitive, that companies do want stored on the blockchain in order to prevent corruption, in order to be able to demonstrate that the data is unchanged, but they don't want necessarily other entities to see it without their permission. So this could be, for example, bills of lading, bills of sale, anything that quotes prices. The number one way corruption happens is by changing of documents. So if you have financial records in the private layer, it can help companies demonstrate later to authorities that that corruption did not happen. The way Minespider deals with these layers is that the public layer is visible to everyone. The transparency and the private layer are encrypted. They're encrypted with what's called a symmetric encryption. That means that if I encrypt my transparency and private layer, I would get a key to each of those layers. These keys I then encrypt with the account of my customer. The account of the customer is what's called a public key, and it means that only the customer has the private key to decrypt it and then read it. What does this mean? This means that even though my public transparency and private layer are all posted publicly and everyone can see that they are there and that they are unchanged, only the owner of the data can actually read them and see what is in the transparency and private layers. What happens when the customer receives a shipment of metal is that they will process that metal. They have their own data about the way they've processed it, things they've done to ensure worker safety, to ensure no corruption on their end. They will upload this data into their transparency and private layers. They will remove the key for the private layer of their supplier, and then they will take the three keys, the transparency key of their supplier, their own transparency and their own privacy and private layer keys, and encrypt those with the public key of their customer, and so on. So if there are 10 steps in the supply chain, the customer receiving an end product will receive the private layer key for their immediate supplier and 10 keys for 10 transparency layers of everyone who came before them. In this way, only the owner of that account has access to the data in a certificate. This is important because even though there are governments that may want access to this data, when you're going across borders, you don't want to give any one government preferred access because then other governments might not want to use that system. It is much better to leave the control of the data with the data owner, who can then share it with the regulatory authorities as required. This also prevents security leaks and encourages participation in responsible sourcing. Can the system be used for other applications? Absolutely. But this is one of the ways that we've made Minespider general purpose, so that other applications can be built on top, tracking whatever data is needed in any supply chain. So that's a bit of a tech talk into how Minespider's layers work. Do you have any questions, comments? Leave them with us or reach out at hello@minespider.com.